Okay, so at this point in the show, I feel like we need a quick reminder of what's going on, because in order to keep ourselves from going crazy with all this confusing time travel stuff, we need a reminder of the important plot lines. Therefore, the formatting for recapping this opening episode will be slightly different. Dharma wants to access the infinite energy source of this island, and hopes to harness this power for their top secret time travel experiments. As we now know, Daniel figured out these secrets to time travel, and at some point in the future, he travelled back in time to go undercover as a Dharma worker. Ben's trying to protect the island from further exploitation by Charles Widmore. Jack's starting to believe Ben about needing to go back to the island for the good of everyone they left behind.
So obviously John's visit to you made an impression. What did he say to make you such a believer?
Everyone from the boat, everyone we left behind, John said that they'd die too if I didn't come back.
Sun is now cooperating with Widmore because Ben is responsible for Jin's death, and so they have a mutual enemy.
You mentioned that you and I had common interests.
Why don't you tell me exactly what they might be?
To kill Benjamin Linus.
Ever since Ben moved the island, its relation to time has become unstable, and it seems to affect people differently depending on how long they've been on the island, and also their connection to the island. Richard the Ageless is an example of a person who's heavily connected to the island. He explains that John's going to be going back to a time when they haven't met yet, so in order to prove that John knows him, he's going to present to him this compass. He also explains that John needs to die in order to prove to the people back home that they need to come back to the island. A message that seems to be working on Jack at least. Let's go over some of the events of this episode. Saeed breaks Hugo out of the psych ward, but the police think it was Hugo who murdered someone in the process, rather than Saeed. Saeed is no longer working for Ben, and he's actively warning Hugo to stay away from him, this whole mission being about protecting Hugo from Ben. When they get to a safe house, they're ambushed by some hitmen, hired by a person unknown. Not just because I'm doing a poor job at retelling this story, they are literally unknown. There are people with conflicting reasons to control the survivors of Oceanic 815. It's likely going to be Ben or Charles Widmore, but this information's never revealed to us. Saeed successfully kills the attackers, with one kill being especially brutal. And the other death landing Hugo in more trouble when onlookers mistake him as the killer.
I thought it was supposed to be a safe house. I never should have left that island.
In order to fix these time skips, Daniel finds Desmond and tells him to go find his mother when he wakes up in the future, because Desmond is the only other person he knows who can successfully travel time and retain memories of doing so, utilising his anchor. Okay, returning back to my normal method of recapping from here on. I will still be skipping some stuff though, if it's not very interesting or important to the main events. The episode opens with the survivors in a disagreement, arguing over the impact of lying to everyone back home about what really happened when they crashed. Hugo is against the idea of lying, as he isn't too good at keeping secrets. Lepidus, being his usual Chad self, is ready to go along with whatever the group's decision is.
Sorry you got dragged into this, but we need to know that you're with us.
Whatever you guys decide, I'll just roll with.
Hugo's pissed at Saeed for not having his back, saying if you ever need my help in the future, you ain't getting it. And then we cut to the future when he is helping Saeed by driving him away from the crime scene. He hallucinates Ana Lucia pulling him over, saying he's been stupid driving so recklessly. He'll get pulled over by a real cop if he's not careful.
Bro, you need to pull it together. You've got a lot of work to do.
I do?
Do not get arrested. Oh yeah, Libby says hi.
Okay, it's good we're seeing Ana Lucia again, because there's a conspiracy surrounding the reason why her character and Libby were killed off. The actors both received a DUI penalty, aka driving while drunk, around the time when they were killed off from the show. Personally, I don't think these two things are connected, because surely if they were fired, they wouldn't have been brought back for their cameos, as that would give mixed messages about the feelings of the show's producers towards the arrests. A common criticism this show receives is how there were many survivors of the flight, but the story only focuses on a select few. The rest are just extras in the background going along for the ride. Well, in the face of this criticism, we're introduced to Neil, or as Sawyer likes to call him, Frogut, a nickname I can't get behind, because English people say frozen yogurt, not frozen yogurt. So I'm not going to call him Frogut, I'm going to call him Frogut. He's a whiny little bitch, complaining about the disappearance of the camp. And then this happens when he complains about the lack of fire.
How are any of us gonna get through this? Did you hear what I just said? We can't even get fire!
Wonderful. We don't know exactly who these attackers are right now, but our guys get the upper hand when John knifes one of them.
James? Juliet?
We'll find out more about these guys next episode. Hugo sneakily gets Saeed to Jack for medical treatment, but Jack isn't aware of the whole not trusting Ben situation.
Where's Hurley?
At his parents' house.
Who's with him?
I don't know. His mother, maybe?
Does anyone else know he's there?
While Hugo's heating up a Hot Pocket, Ben sneaks in and tries to convince him that Saeed does trust him. Hugo doesn't buy it, and comes up with the genius idea of getting himself arrested.
I'm a murderer. I killed 4 people. 3 people. However many are dead, I killed them. I killed them. I killed them all. Just get me away from here.
As the episode ends, we see this woman doing some hacker-style typing on one of those retro Dharma PCs, and in the background there's a pendulum marking lines across the earth. When she decloaks, she asks Ben if he got them all, and fears the worst if he can't get Hugo out of jail.
So what happens if I can't get them all to come back?
Then God help us all.
Penny gives birth to a wee baby boy, and they name him after Desmond's favourite party powder. Or maybe after some washed out rock star who sacrificed himself. I don't know. He explains to Penny that he needs to go find Daniel's mother, and that's what he sets out to do for the majority of this episode. He locates a woman who took part in his experiments, and finds out that she's now trapped in a never-ending cycle of flashing through time. It's revealed that Charles Widmore is paying for her care, and he also knows who Daniel's mother is. So Desmond pays Charles a visit next to finally get some answers.
This is an address for her. I suspect she won't be pleased to see you. She's a very private person.
Daniel and the gang set off a tripwire, killing some people who don't really matter to the plot. Then they get ambushed by some unhappy campers, who take them back to their base. Richard Alpert is their leader, who rather bizarrely says this.
I assume you've come back for your bomb.
Daniel pretends to know all about this hydrogen bomb called Jughead, and says that he's come here to defuse it. The US Army left this bomb here at some point during the 50s, which is when the gang are right now. Why the US Army brought a bomb here is uncertain, but that doesn't really matter. The unhappy campers are the same guys who attacked Sawyer's group, and at first they remain silent to their captors, only communicating to each other in Latin. Little did they know, Juliet also speaks Latin.
That one asked why we aren't in uniform, and this one told him to shut up.
And how is it that they know how to speak Latin, Julia?
The same reason I do. Because they're others.
One breaks the other's neck for opening his mouth, and then he escapes. John Locke, being their future leader, deciding it's best not to shoot them. It's revealed in this episode that Daniel is in love with Charlotte, which is terrible timing because she's currently bleeding internally from the constant time jumps.
Charlotte!
On the boat journey home, we see Kate explain that she feels responsible for taking care of Aaron, so she's going to pretend it's her baby. Kate and Jack agree that no matter what happens when they get home, they need to stick together.
If we're gonna protect the people that we left behind, tomorrow morning I'm gonna have to convince everyone to lie. Are you with me?
I have always been with you.
Flashing forward, Sun has come to look after Aaron, while Kate goes to a meeting with a lawyer, who's leading a legal proceeding to determine if Kate really is the mother. Kate's willing to play ball, but she wants to know who the secret man is behind the lawsuit. Based on every surprise reveal we've had so far, I'm placing my bets on it being Ben. Why is Ben always the surprise reveal? Her request is denied because Benjamin Linus wants to remain anonymous. And just in case you had any doubt, here's the reveal at the end.
Who is that? That's my lawyer.
Back at the hotel, Sun receives a mystery package. Inside this package, there are some lovely chocolates, a gun, and a picture of Ben and Jack. The perfect Christmas present. There's another assassination attempt on Sayid, but luckily he sees it coming and pulls a reverse Uno. Ben stresses that they're running out of time to get everyone back, telling Jack to go pick up Kate, and he'll go and get Hugo, which will be interesting to see how he pulls that off, considering Hugo's in jail. This situation's cleared up by his lawyer, saying Hugo's going to be released due to a lack of evidence that he committed any of the murders. Due to another flash, the time travel team are now in the time when Locke tried to break into the hatch and the light came on. For some reason, he's being all shady about what was happening there, despite the fact that everyone knows about the hatch and is aware that they're currently skipping through time.
Do you know when we are? We need to keep moving.
Sawyer walks in on the past event of Claire giving birth, which is nice I suppose, but it's a short-lived moment because here comes another flash. Yep. I'm starting to feel as irritated as Sawyer gets with all these flipping time skips. Back on the beach, they see their old camp is back, but something feels different about it. They don't recognise these canoes or these water bottles from Ajira Airlines.
Ajira, it's an airline. It's based out of India, but they fly everywhere.
Great. Maybe they got a flight out of here to Vegas tonight.
They're paddling over to the other island, and another canoe of people start shooting at them. But before we can find out who these people are or what they want... Thank you, Lord! I take that back! The time period they find themselves in now is after a French life raft crashed on the island, and we cut to when that raft was still out at sea, with a bunch of French people who spot a body in the water, and when they pull it aboard it turns out to be Jin. On dry land, he's able to communicate with the lady, and this particular lady just so happens to be...
I'm Danielle Rousseau.
Ben gathers everyone he can at the docks, and Kate realises that he was the one behind the legal case. Sunny's here too, and she's ready to get her revenge on Ben. Sun goes to feed him a lead salad, but Ben says, whoa, hold up, I didn't kill Jin. In fact, Jin is still alive, and if you promise not to shoot me, I'll prove it. He invites them to come with him and come meet the person who can get them all back to the island. Kate and Sayid check out, wanting absolutely nothing to do with Ben.
I don't want any part of this. And if I see you, or him again, it'll be extremely unpleasant for all of us.
There's a really good moment for Ben, where Jack's talking with Sun about killing him if he doesn't fulfill his promise, and Ben slams on the brakes to lay down some truth.
What I'm doing is helping you. And if you had any idea what I've had to do to keep you safe, to keep your friends safe, you'd never stop thanking me. You want to shoot me, then shoot me, but let's get on with it. What's it gonna be?
Jin isn't privy to the whole time travel stuff, so naturally he's very confused seeing a young Danielle and hearing her say that the year is 1988.
What's the matter? I need to go find my camp.
What camp?
They ask him to help find the radio tower, and if he does, they'll help him find his camp, even though it doesn't exist yet. They encounter the smoke monster, and it drags one of the French guys under a mysterious temple, ripping the guy's arm off when he refuses to let go.
What's that thing?
Then the island sets off another flashbang, leaping only Jin forward in time to a point when all the French guys are dead, with Danielle about to kill the last, and it just so happens to be her baby daddy.
You!
No!
You disappeared!
No, please, wait!
You're sick too! No. You're a carrier!
This is one of those rare occasions where seeing some pre-established lore take place enhances my experience as an audience member. I am a less is more kind of guy. I don't always want to see the things that we've already been told about. In the next flash, he gets held up by a familiar voice.
Turn around slowly.
You're kidding me! I thought you were on that boat. I thought you were dead.
No, in water.
He tries his best to explain, but he relies on Charlotte to translate some of the deeper conversation. Wow, she speaks Korean? Is there anything Essex girls can't do? After some more flashes, Charlotte has a vision and warns Jin that Sun must never come back.
Don't let them bring her back. This place is dead.
In another vision, she tells the gang to head for a well, which is where the Orchid Station used to be. And then she remembers that she actually grew up on the island, as her family were part of the Dharma initiative. But then she was instructed to leave and never come back, and the person who gave this instruction was Daniel. John says that he'll be the one to climb down the well, believing it to be a passageway off the island, so he can go get the rest of the gang back. But Jin says, nope, you can bring back everyone else except Sun. Tell her that I'm dead if you have to, but just promise that you'll leave her behind.
You say I wash up. You bury me.
True.
As he climbs down, we see that this well is actually the source of the light that's been skipping people through time. And interestingly, it puts John in a different time to the others.
James, stop.
Come on and help me.
James.
Why on earth would Sawyer think that digging's going to help? Clearly John's been taken years ahead or years back, so even if he was in the dirt, he would be very much dead.
We can't help him.
She takes her sweet time doing it, but eventually Charlotte dies. I feel like they only gave her character some meaning at the end of her story, and that's why personally I feel nothing for this death. So we're just going to go ahead and move on. Down in the well, John is greeted by Christian, who asks him if he's willing to sacrifice his life in order to bring everyone back, to which he says yes. Christian tells him that the way forward is to unjam the wheel that moves the island. So this is the cause of all these flashes, eh? Just a pebble stuck in the gears. Just give it a little jimmy and you're good to go.
Say hello to my son.
Ben and the gang pull up outside a church, and Ben reveals Jin's wedding ring as proof that he's still alive.
So I need you to decide right now. Will you come with me?
Yes.
Desmond's here too, and he reveals that the woman they're meeting is Daniel Faraday's mother. It's Eloise. You may remember her from that weird episode with Desmond. She expresses some slight disappointment that Ben failed to gather the whole gang, but she insists they proceed anyway.
All right, let's get started.
So far, this is my favourite episode of Season 5. Jack wakes up on the island, just as he did in the pilot episode, and he hears Hugo calling out for help. This is a flash forward, but not the annoying new kind, the good old fashioned kind, the ones that don't give you a migraine. We go back to Eloise, and she reveals that she works in a Dharma station called the Lamppost, built over a unique pocket of energy on Earth, and its function is to locate the other pockets of energy. If you recall, Rose visited one of these pockets looking to cure her cancer. The island, as I'm sure you've sussed out, is one of these pockets too, but the island is unique in that it's constantly moving.
They should stop looking for where the island was supposed to be and start looking for where it was going to be.
The Dharma scientists were able to predict where the island would move to next. So if these guys stand any hope to get back to the island, they better move quick before it moves again, causing Eloise to have to run another calculation. I wonder how this calculation gets affected when Ben or anyone else manually moves the island. Desmond's the next person to call BS on this whole situation, saying, "Screw you guys, I'm going home."
You say the island's not done with me? Well, I'm done with the island.
Eloise explains that they need to recreate the scenario that first brought them to the island, and if they can't make it an exact recreation, the results of them being transported back will be unpredictable. There's a particular flight to Guam that flies over the island, and this is the plane they all need to be on. Eloise takes Jack aside, because he has a special part in this plan. On the original flight, he was transporting his father in the coffin, so in place of his father, he's going to be transporting John Locke's body. Eloise hands over John's self-deletion note.
I didn't know.
Well, why would you? Obituaries don't see fit to mention when people hang themselves, Jack.
In order to use John as a proxy, he's going to need to give him something that belonged to his father. And this detail pushes his limit of what he's willing to believe.
This is ridiculous.
Oh, stop thinking how ridiculous it is.
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too.
He wanders around the church feeling lost, but then Ben tells him the story of Thomas the Apostle, the man who refused to acknowledge the resurrection of Jesus and needed to touch his wounds to believe it's him.
So was he?
Of course he was. We're all convinced sooner or later, Jack.
While Jack contemplates the possibility of this being real, he gets a call from the nursing home where his paternal grandfather was caught trying to run away, and it just so happens that he mistakenly packed Christian's shoes in his case. This coincidence is enough to convince Jack that maybe these aren't coincidences at all, but the universe's way of guiding him to where he needs to be. Later that night, he finds Kate resting in his bed, and she says, "If you're going back, I'm going back. Just as long as you don't ask me any questions about Aaron." Okay then. The next morning, he gets a panicked call from Ben, who's covered in blood, asking him to go get John's coffin from a butcher's. It's a strange and oddly touching moment, seeing Jack standing over John's body and putting his father's shoes on him. You can feel John's presence in the room, like he's still alive, and Jack feels it too.
Wherever you are, John, you must be laughing your ass off. And I'm actually doing this. Because this is even crazier than you are.
Jack's relationship with John still has some flaws, as he's unwilling to read his note, saying he got what he wanted as Jack's coming back, and reading his note won't change this.
Rest in peace.
Hugo does a really kind thing by booking every other seat on the flight, to lessen the amount of innocent lives that will be affected by the crash. Although to outsiders who aren't clued into this future event, this act comes across as needlessly selfish.
It doesn't matter why. They can take the next plane.
On the plane, we see some other things that have been recreated. Sayid is in handcuffs being escorted by a marshal, just as Kate was. Son has Jin's wedding ring, so it's like he's here in spirit. And the same goes for Charlie's guitar. As a slight variable, it turns out that Frank Lapidus is the pilot for this flight. He never intended to be here, it's just a coincidence. Or is it? So yeah, the flash happens, and they find themselves being back on the island. A Dharma van approaches to inspect who these people are, and when the employee steps out, the surprise reveal is Ben, I mean Jin. One more detail before we move on, is that on the flight, Jack eventually read John's note. We meet a couple of new people in this episode. Caesar, who Jack saw at the airport, and Ilana, the person who arrested Sayid. They're survivors of the Ajira plane crash. Ilana is suspicious of one of the supposed survivors, who she doesn't recall seeing on the plane, and for once the reveal isn't Ben.
My name is Walter Hartwell White.
Ilana is straight up about her suspicions, and Locke is straight up too, saying that he believes that he's wearing the suit that he's due to be buried in, and he doesn't remember being on the plane either. We go back to when he turned the wheel, and just as what happened to Ben, he wakes up in the Tunisian desert. But due to his leg being busted, he spends an entire day helplessly baking under the sun. Some angry Tunisians pick him up and rush him to the hospital, and while he's being treated, he sees Matthew Abaddon watching over him. His leg being snapped back into place makes him pass out. Charles Widmore's out here keeping an eye on this exit, knowing that it's the same place where Ben exited from. Charles notices how John appears to be the same age as when they met all those years ago.
How long has it been for you since we first met? Since you walked into our camp?
4 days.
That's incredible.
Widmore explains that Ben exiled him from the group and was forced to leave the island. Knowing that he and Ben are rivals, John lies to him about his mission to bring everyone back. But Widmore says, "Look, don't BS me, I know what you're doing here, and I actually want to help you in doing it."
Why would you help me?
Because there's a war coming, John. And if you're not back on the island when that happens, the wrong side is going to win.
So it seems that Ben and Charles both want the same thing. They both want to bring everyone back to the island, which I find to be kind of confusing, but I'm sure this will be cleared up soon. He gives John a new passport under the alias Jeremy Bentham, and also information on where to find his friends. John makes the very good point in questioning why he should trust the man who sent a mercenary team of killers to the island. But Widmore counters with the clarification that Keamy's team were instructed to kill Ben, and in doing so would allow John to become the new leader of the island, as is his destiny.
The island needs you, John.
What makes you think I'm so special?
Because you are.
And here's Matthew Abaddon to help him find the gang. In biblical terms, the name Abaddon is the ruler of all demons in the abyss, aka Hell. I don't know if this detail will tie into his character, but I thought it was an interesting detail to mention. The first person that John visits is Sayid, who's living in the Dominican Republic doing some charity work. Sayid turns him down, saying that he's found a new purpose doing some real good for others.
I'm not going back. For 2 years, I was manipulated into thinking I was protecting everyone on the island.
Who was manipulating you?
Ben.
His next visit is to Walt, who was anticipating John's visit as he's been having visions of him in a funeral suit. He doesn't even attempt to persuade Walt to come back, explaining that he doesn't need to convince everyone to come back, just one key person. After he fails again with Hugo, Matthew asks John if he's ready to address the fact that they've met before.
You're not really going to pretend you don't remember that I was an orderly in the hospital right after your accident? That I was the one who told you to go on your walkabout?
I remember.
I help people get to where they need to get to, John.
John demands that one of the people he visits is Helen, but unfortunately she's 6 feet underground. As they go back to the car, someone shoots Matthew dead. A surprisingly brutal scene that I wasn't expecting. John drives away the best he can with a broken leg, and he ends up hospitalising himself again. As fate would have it, he ends up in Jack's hospital. We get another frustrating back and forth between these two, where John's trying to convince him on the reasons to go back, and Jack for the time being is still refusing. But we all know that he ends up changing his mind. In a hotel room, John writes his self-deletion note, wishing that Jack had believed him. With that done, he gets to work installing some new cable in the ceiling, with absolutely no dark intentions behind it. He's simply installing some fibre optic internet, as the Wi-Fi quality in this hotel sucks. But then Ben comes in and says, "Whoa, hold on, stop. Fibre optic internet doesn't exist yet, John. You're breaking time travel rules." He confuses John by saying that he's the good guy, not Widmore, and that if he finishes the job installing the cable, he will destroy their chances of getting anyone back. John then explains how he needs to find Eloise, and for some reason, John saying this troubles Ben so much that he decides, actually, John, I'm going to help you with installing your fibre optic. Yeah, I know, I'm very confused too. How on earth does doing this help Ben's mission in any way? He literally just expressed how much he needs John to be alive. It really hurts my head. At the end of the episode, Caesar explains how before the plane crashed, he saw an extremely bright light before many of the passengers vanished into thin air, describing Hugo as one of those people. Some of the people on the plane got hurt, and they've been in sickbay since they crashed. And one of these people just so happens to be, of course, it's Ben.
You know him?
Yeah. He's the man who killed me.
After John turned the wheel, Sawyer and the others felt that something was different. Their headaches are gone, and the time skip seemed to have stopped. God, let's hope so. We find ourselves in the time when the Dharma initiative still occupied the island. Security are watching over the camera feeds, and they see a drunk Horace messing around with some dynamite.
Oh, he's got dynamite.
Get her out of here! Get her out of here now!
So they hurry along to tell their head of security.
He's got dynamite, and he's blowing up trees.
Son of a bitch.
He delivers the passed out Horace back to his pregnant wife, and as timing has it, she's about to go into labour, so we better stick with her and see what happens. Oh, come on! On their way back to the beach, they come across a situation where they could step in and help, seeing this woman in distress. Miles confers with Daniel about the consequences on the timeline if they were to intervene, but Daniel says it doesn't matter. Whatever happens in this timeline happened before.
Whatever happened, happened.
Yeah, thanks anyway, Plato. I'm going over there.
This is where they meet Horace's girlfriend Amy, who at this time was married to a guy called Paul, the guy who the so-called hostiles just shot. She urges that they need to bring his body back and hide the other bodies in order to prevent a war breaking out. She leads them back towards their base, but she's having trouble trusting their story, especially when Juliet shows caution towards their perimeter fence, almost like she's familiar with it. Amy claims to have disarmed it, but then as they all go through it, they collapse. Except for her, because she's wearing earplugs. Yep. Juliet is the only one around who can deliver this baby, but she's hesitant, thinking about her past experiences with helping mothers on this island give birth. But in this case, it all turns out fine. We go backwards in time again, but this time without a transition title card. So it's very confusing seeing it cut to Sawyer, who's waking up on Horace's sofa. Horace explains they have trouble trusting strangers, even though they do appreciate him helping Amy. He says that Sawyer and his people are going to be escorted off the island first thing in the morning, as only Dharma people are allowed to stay here. As they wait for morning, Daniel spots Charlotte as a child. It's a nice detail, but enough with the heartwarming stuff, because the alarm has triggered, warning of a hostile intrusion, and it's Richard Alpert. He's come here to question the disappearance of his two men. Sawyer, looking to defuse the situation, goes out there to confess what really happened, saying that the truce was never broken, because he's the guy who killed Richard's men, and he's not a member of the Dharma Initiative. He then reveals how much he knows about the timeline of events.
I also know 20 years ago some bald fella limped into your camp and fed you some mumbo-jumbo about being your leader.
In appreciation for Sawyer working out a peaceful solution, Horace allows them to stay a further 2 weeks. Sawyer and Juliet have become a romantic couple, and as we already know, they remained a part of the Dharma Initiative. Sawyer breaks the news to Horace that he's a daddy now, but he missed the birth. He explains that the reason he was drinking is because he discovered that Amy kept Paul's necklace, and he feels like she's not over him yet. Sawyer gets an early morning call from Jin, saying he needs to come meet him quick, because he just stumbled into Jack, Hugo and Kate. Kate being here is extra meaningful, because Sawyer was telling Horace about the woman he used to love fading from his memory.
I never stopped thinking about her. But now I can barely remember what she looks like. She's just gone. And she ain't never coming back.
We see how Frank experienced the plane arriving at the island, and the interesting thing about it, the only people from the OG cast who didn't vanish in the flash were Son and Ben.
Kate, Harley, where'd they go?
They're gone.
Gone where?
How would I know?
Sawyer's reunion with his old friends was quite nice, especially considering how much they used to resent Sawyer at the start. His character arc is by far the most satisfying.
Is you on the ribs there, Kong?
Come. I actually missed that.
Missed you too, Hugo.
Jack explains to Jin that even though Sun was on the plane, he's not sure where she is now. And so Jin rushes to the flame station to see if they picked up any planes on their radar. Radzinski, the guy running this place, says they haven't detected a plane, but what they have detected is there's an intruder on the base. The intruder turns out to be Saeed, and Jin has to pretend that he doesn't know him.
Say another word, and you're dead.
Jin radios Sawyer about the situation, and they have to keep Saeed in jail, while they come up with a way to save him from being treated as a hostile.
What are we gonna do with him?
Bring the man some damn food, we're not savages.
Wondering how to sneak the old gang into the Dharma Initiative, Juliet comes up with the idea to blend them into the same crowd as the new initiates when the next submarine arrives. Seeing how they induct new recruits is interesting. They get assigned a job here based on their background, which Sawyer and Juliet have to fabricate on the spot. Then the recruits have to watch a Dharma orientation tape.
Welcome to the island. For your own comfort and safety, we ask that you stay within the confines of your new living quarters. Our barracks are surrounded by high-frequency sonar tents.
Sun and Ben wander from the group to go find a boat, as they want to paddle over to the main island where the others are. Frank begs Sun to reconsider, as Ben is still perceived to be the bad guy. While Ben is flapping his jaws at Frank, Sun knocks him out, as she doesn't trust him either. When Frank and Son arrive on the main island, they find out the reason why the Ajira plane wasn't picked up on the radar is because the plane and some of the passengers were transported to a different timeline to the other passengers. Oh god, my head. Christian's here at Dharma Town to show them an old team photo as evidence of this.
I'm sorry, but you have a bit of a journey ahead of you.
We see a young Ben Linus giving Sayid a sandwich and a book. He asks Sayid if he's from Richard's group and says that he wishes to be a part of that group too, but he's waiting until the time is right to enact his plan.
Ben?
Horace warns that if Sawyer, aka LaFleur, can't get Sayid to talk, then he's going to bring in the Dharma interrogator, and he doesn't mess around. Sayid is puzzled as to why Sawyer isn't helping him to escape. He thought they were friends now, but as Sawyer puts it, he's got a pretty nice life here. He's worked hard to be a part of this community, and he's not just going to throw it away.
Either you cooperate and join the party in Dharmaville, or you're on your own.
Then I guess I'm on my own.
When Ben next visits Sayid, he's terrified to bump into his dad, and it's an incredibly hard watch, seeing how abusive Ben's dad is.
What are you doing?
You made this sandwich for him, didn't you?
Who told you to do that?
Nobody. I just thought.
You just thought, huh? Go home. Go on. I'll tell you what to think.
In the flash forward part, Ben finds Sayid and warns him that someone murdered John, and right now there's a man waiting outside Hugo's mental institution looking to do the same to him or anyone who tries to break him out. We also see Sayid being arrested by Ilana for murdering someone. Back in jail, Sayid's still not talking, so they take him to their interrogator called Oldham, who Sawyer describes as...
These are you.
Oldham feeds him a truth-telling drug, and so he has no choice but to reveal the whole truth about who he is and what he knows about the future of the Dharma Initiative. Most of them believe him to be crazy, but Radzinski believes that he's a spy.
The Swan was to study electromagnetism. But of course, that was before the incident.
The Swan? How could he know what we were going to name it? We haven't even built it yet.
The group votes to execute him, so Sawyer begs for him to try and escape. But he's resigned himself to the idea that he's meant to be here.
When I woke up in the jungle, and I realized I was back on this island, I felt there was no purpose to it. But now I know exactly why I'm here.
To get shot? Then what? You're out of your mind.
We get a repeat scene where a burning Dharma van rolls into town. This time it's a distraction created by Ben, who breaks Sayid out of prison, asking him to take him away from this place. Jin finds them wandering around the woods and radios Sawyer to ask if he's aware, but before he gets an answer, Sayid knocks him out because he doesn't need to see what Sayid's about to do.
You were right about me.
What?
I am a killer.
Damn, that's a shocking scene. I mean, we all know he survives this, but still. Jin wakes up and hurries Ben back home. Juliet does what she can to keep him alive, but they need Jack's surgeon skills to stop the bleeding, and he says no. With his rationale being that despite Ben being just a kid now, he's willing to let him die if it means preventing all of the things that he's going to do when he's an adult. This of course brings up the paradoxical problem in that Ben can't die, even without Jack's help, because the future's going to happen in exactly the same way we've seen it happen. And if that isn't the case, then everyone should be disappearing right now. And it appears that Hugo agrees with me. But then Miles has to come along with his big time travel brain and explain how the island is no longer following the rules of time ever since Ben turned the wheel, so their actions right now do matter. But even Miles has trouble explaining some of these holes in logic.
You said Ben couldn't die because he still has to grow up and become the leader of the others.
Because this is his past.
But when we first captured Ben and Sayid, tortured him, then why wouldn't he remember getting shot by that same guy when he was a kid?
Huh. Hadn't thought of that.
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too.
Running out of options, they decide to get Ben to the others, in hopes that they can use their special island magic to save his life. Richard agrees to take Ben, but warns that using the island's powers to save his life will change him forever. And the episode ends with Ben being taken into a mysterious temple. The flash forward stuff is Kate paying a visit to Cassidy, and she explains her situation with having to take Aaron back home. Sawyer gave Kate Cassidy's address with a wad of money for their daughter Clementine. It's really not that interesting, so we're going to skip to the good part of Kate's story here, when she finds Claire's mother, in hopes that she'll take Aaron so he can be with his real family. Kate tearfully spends her last moments with Aaron, in another chapter of heartbreak in the story of Kate Austen. Is she ever going to get a win? Young Ben Linus meets Charles Widmore for the first time, and we can see that Charles cared about his well-being, knowing that he's going to be under their protection from his abusive dad. I've said it before, but they made really great casting choices for the younger versions of characters. We then cut to the moment where Ben sees that John is back, in his spirit form or something. He asks Ben why he would come back to the island when he was forbidden to do so, if you recall him saying that once he's moved the island, he would never be allowed to come back.
Jacob told me what we had to do. You don't get to make all the decisions.
He told me what to do, but he didn't tell you how. Because he wants me to suffer the consequences.
What consequences?
Whoever moves the island can never come back.
He explains that he's ready to come back because he's ready to be judged by the smoke monster. So finally, it looks like we're going to be getting some answers as to what this smoke monster actually is. And for all of you people watching who've never seen the show before, it's going to be an important piece of the puzzle as to what this island is all about. So far, we know this island is a source of life-giving energy that can cure you of your diseases and make the impossible possible, such as conceiving a child where you were previously unable to. But there also appears to be a presence of a conflicting darkness, which conjures up ill fate and death. The smoke monster appears to be a product of this darkness, which we'll be learning more about in these last 2 seasons. We see the moments when Ben kidnapped baby Alex, explaining to Rousseau that he's doing this to protect the child.
Be grateful you're still alive. And if you want your child to live, every time you hear whispers, you run the other way.
When he returns to base camp, Widmore is displeased that Ben failed to kill Rousseau and the baby, unable to bring himself to do such a heinous act. We hear that these killing orders came from Jacob, who, as we're told, represents the island.
Is killing this baby what Jacob wants? And here she is. You do it.
By far the most interesting storyline of this episode is Ben and Locke's quest to find the smoke monster. Their first obstacle is Caesar, who's taken the position of leader of the new survivors. He distrusts John Locke for seeming to know too much about this island and not being remembered as being on the plane. So wanting to keep a close eye on him, he refuses Locke when trying to take a boat. In response to this situation, Ben shoots Caesar, saying to John that this is his way of apologising for killing him. They find Sam and Frank hanging out in Ben's old house, as they were instructed to wait here until John Locke arrives, something they believed wouldn't be possible with John being dead.
Considering he's dead, we ain't holding our breath.
Well, you might want to look outside.
John claims to not understand why or how he's back on the island, and able to walk about as if he were alive. But one thing he does know is that his connection with the island is stronger than ever. He's Ben's only hope of finding the monster, and Sun's only hope of finding Jin. Ben's usual method of summoning the monster is to stick his hand in a clogged toilet hole and dislodge the turd, corking it up. But this method doesn't work this time. John says, well, if you can't summon the monster, let's go out and find it. Ben believes that it comes from inside this temple, the same temple where he was taken as a kid to restore his life. But John says, nope, it doesn't live inside the temple, it lives under it. Ben falls for a flaw and has to continue alone. He gets to the smoke monster's summoning shrine, and before long the smoke starts to appear. It's cool to see the smoke monster up close like this. If you remember before, we saw how it showed Echo snapshots from his life, and this is part of its ritual when judging someone.
I hate you! I hate your guts! I wish you were dead!
It temporarily manifests Alex back to life, giving Ben the instructions on what to do next.
You will listen to every word John Locke says, and you will follow his every order. Do you understand?
Say it! Say you'll follow him!
Yes, I will. I'll follow him, I swear.
Another interesting detail is that we see the moment that Ben took charge of Widmore's group, and then banished Widmore from the island for breaking several rules, like having a child with someone off the island. He calls Ben a hypocrite because he too broke a rule when he refused to kill Rousseau and her baby as instructed by the island. Cut into the future, we see Ben about to kill Penny in revenge, but he hesitates seeing that she has a child. Desmond gives him the ultimate beatdown. And that explains the scene when he was covered in blood as he was on the phone to Jack. This episode is awesome, as it turns one of my least favourite characters into one I admire, which is quite an achievement. We open with a flashback to Miles and his mummy looking to rent a new apartment.
Comes fully equipped.
As Miles is wandering around, he hears a ghost calling out from a neighbouring apartment, so he sneaks in to see what's up. At this point, he doesn't understand his powers, so he's confusing his mum and their new landlord with all this talk about hearing dead people.
He kept calling out for Kimberly.
Kimberly? That's his wife. Oh, she died last year. Now, how would you know that?
I heard him.
Miles, what are you talking about?
We then fast forward to when his mum is on her deathbed. The two had become estranged over the years, with all this confusion about his abilities and her refusal to reveal the details about who his father is. With little time left to confess the truth, she says that he ran away when he was a baby, and he died somewhere Miles would never find him. I wonder if she means the island. She does mean the island, of course it's the island. It's always the friggin' island. His dad is Marvin Candle, or whatever name he's going by right now.
I'm Dr. Marvin Candle. I'm Dr. Mark Wickman. I'm Dr. Edgar Hallerwax. I'm Dr. Pierre Chang.
He struggles to pluck up the courage to go and speak with him, knowing that he will likely dismiss the idea, as he isn't aware that time travelling is possible.
Doesn't matter. My father is dead. He's gone. He never cared about me, and nothing I can do will ever change that.
Miles' dad gets them working on a new secret project, which is to build the Swan Station, and Hugo realises they're working on the thing that caused them to crash in the first place. At the end of the episode, Miles struggles to hold back the tears, watching his baby self being cared for by a seemingly loving and caring father. He asks Miles to assist with greeting the new arrivals, and one of these new arrivals just so happens to be Daniel Faraday.
Dan. Hey, Miles. Long time no see.
Two more details to mention. The first relating to this episode's title. Hugo realises that he's in the time between the making of Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, so he's written a better script to send to George Lucas that will change the story in the third film for the better.
Luke found out Vader was his father, but instead of putting away his lightsaber and talking about it, he overreacted and got his hand cut off. I mean, they worked it out eventually, but at what cost?
This is such a great Hugo moment, being able to use his passion for Star Wars to give Miles a lesson on forgiveness.
It all could have been avoided if they just, communicated. And let's face it, the Ewoks suck, dude.
The last detail is that back home, Miles was hired by Hank Schrader to speak with his dead son, but then Miles gives him his money back, admitting that he wasn't able to speak with him, and he gives Hank a bitter reality check.
If you needed your son to know that you loved him, you should have told him when he was still alive.
I loved this episode. It was nice to take a break from the wackiness of the island to focus on a character who's been mentally suffering his whole life, finally getting some closure on his father. Daniel visits Jack to tell him that even though his mother told Jack that coming to this island was his destiny, she was wrong. Oh, God. Oh, I can't take it anymore. All this constant flip-flopping on destiny. This is driving me insane. You need to go back to the island. No, you don't. Yes, you do. Whoa, wait. Why did you come back to the island? That was the wrong thing to do. We see the moment when Daniel went down to the Swan dig site, where he bumps into Marvin Candle. He warns him of the danger if they keep on digging, and the only way to make him change his mind is by convincing him that he's from the future. And a piece of evidence that time travel is real is standing right here. But Miles shuts him down for trying to reveal their connection.
Are you out of your mind? What are you doing?
I'm just making sure that your father does what he's supposed to do.
And what's that?
You'll see.
His next idea to save their lives is to go find the hostiles, as one of them is his mother, and she's the only person who can get everyone to where they belong. Now look, I don't wish to spoil too much here, but trust me, they all belong on the island, so I'm not going to waste time on any other possibility. One of the Dharma guys, whose name I don't care to look up, saw Kate and Sawyer taking young Ben to the others, so they're keeping him in a cupboard until they know what to do with him. Radzinski catches the gang on the way to visit the others, so he goes to confront Sawyer about it, but he can hear someone inside banging against the door, and finds the nameless guy tied up.
Get down on the ground now. I said now!
The episode ends with Daniel being shot and killed by his own mother, and she's all like, oh my god, no way. If you're wondering how he can be dead when he's alive in the future, imagine a person existing in many timelines, but the soul of that person is connected to the energy source of our world. This is kind of jumping ahead into spoiler territory, but it should help with any confusion you have right now. Eloise says that she'll believe any story that Jack and Kate have for why they're here, as she recalls seeing Daniel when he was 17 and ordering him to disarm the bomb. The same bomb they could use to destroy the Swan Station. Only problem is, the place where they buried the bomb is now under the Dharma village. Luckily though, there's a convenient tunnel leading right to it. With the Dharma village on high alert, Miles, Hugo and Jin make a plan to go back to the beach. Marvin Candle intercepts them, demanding to know the truth about them being from the future. When Hugo denies it, he gives him a series of tests to prove that he's from the current time.
What year were you born? What year?
1931.
You're 46?
Yeah.
Who's the president of the United States?
All right, dude, we're from the future. Sorry.
This is a fun detail, because when they first arrived on the island on this timeline, Hugo was worried about being found out, and he was told not to worry about knowing this exact detail.
What if they start asking us questions we can't answer, like, who's president in 1977?
It's not a damn game show, Hugo.
This is when Marvin accepts that Miles is his son, and that Daniel's right about the dangers of drilling into the energy source. But Radzinski isn't willing to hear it, and insists that they keep drilling. When Marvin orders the evacuation, Miles sees that this is the reason they got separated. He didn't abandon Miles, he saved his life. John expresses that they need to go find Jacob in order to get some instructions on what to do next. But this is just a trick. He doesn't want to visit Jacob for advice, he wants Jacob to be dead.
Then why are we going to Jacob?
So I can kill him.
With everyone evacuating the island, Sawyer, Kate and Juliet are forced to go with them on the submarine. I wonder when they'll be coming back.
It's okay.
Don't leave me.
In this episode, we meet a character called the Man in Black. That's his official name, by the way. They're playing into the whole black versus white trope, where white represents good and black represents evil. Please don't take that out of context.
Black? Huh. That's the worst color there is. No offense there, Carl.
I get it all the time.
The Man in Black and Jacob are brothers, who were born here on this island a very long time ago. This is also Jacob's first appearance in the flesh. We get to see two connecting dots here. The first is seeing the black rock approaching the island. The second is that we see the island's famous statue in its original and complete form. It's the Egyptian god of fertility. In the flashbacks, we see Jacob visiting the survivors one by one, like he's keeping tabs on them, maybe to make sure they're on the right track to getting back to the island.
대분 그혼을 체크합니다.
두 분의 사랑은 아주 특별한 것입니다.
The plan for the bomb is to remove the core and transport it to the Swan Station, believing that if they destroy the Swan Station, it will prevent their plane from ever crashing. They better hurry though, because the workers are continuing to drill down, even though Marvin's warning them of the high temperature readings, which if they were to reach any higher could melt the drill, or worse. Juliet insists that they get back to the island, hoping to stop the bomb from detonating, forcing the submarine captain by gunpoint to take them back to the surface. Jack and the gang enter a shootout with the Dharma people, after they got spotted trying to plant the bomb. Saeed gets shot and clings to life as they drive away, with Jack insisting that they carry on their mission, as if they successfully pull this off, Saeed will never get shot. In a flashback, we see Jacob recruiting Ilana to help him with a very important mission. Let's just go ahead and reveal what that mission is. Jacob needs her to protect the so-called candidates, who will replace Jacob should anything horrible happen to him. The episode ends with Sawyer's gang standing in the way of Jack's gang. Sawyer pleads with Jack to consider the consequences of preventing the plane crash. He'll lose all the friends and relationships that he's built here. Jack still doesn't agree with him, so Sawyer resorts to his fist to do the convincing.
Will you stop?
Will you stop?
No.
We see a flashback of Jacob picking up Hugo from jail, telling him that he needs to go back to the island. And he leaves Charlie's guitar with him, knowing that he probably will decide to go back. He was also on scene when John Locke got pushed out the window. With a touch of his magic hands, he regains consciousness.
Don't worry, everything's gonna be all right. Sorry this happened to you.
Jack and the people on his side try to sneak into the Swan site, but the Dharma folks are on high alert. Sawyer's here too to help out, after realising that Juliet's on Jack's side now. Sawyer holds the nameless guy hostage while Jack does his thing, but after he drops the bomb, nothing happens.
This don't look like LAX.
The drill has already punctured the energy pocket, and the electromagnetism is kicking in, causing absolute chaos. Juliet gets caught in some chains that, for dramatic timing, started moving after other metallic objects. Sawyer begs for Juliet to hold on, but it's no good, and she gets pulled down the well. She's probably dead, but we'll come back and check. John and Ben enter Jacob's temple, located under the Egyptian god statue, and finally he shows himself to Ben, after all these years of his dedication. Outside, Ilana reveals John's dead body.
I don't understand. If this is Locke, who's in there?
John instructs Ben to kill Jacob, something he was convincing him to do earlier, suggesting how insulting it must be to have always been the obeying dog, without Jacob ever showing his face, or helping Ben when he's really needed it. Under Jacob's supposed protection, he had a cancerous tumour grow on his spine, and his daughter got killed in front of him. He echoes this frustration, before repeatedly shoving a knife in Jacob, and then to finish the job, John kicks him into the fire. Okay, so Juliet's alive somehow, with just enough fight left in her to pick up a rock and start smashing it against the bomb. This way she won't be dying for nothing.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
So, are you ready for the final season? I am very apprehensive, but we've come this far, and we need to finish what we started. And I couldn't have done it without all the names you see here. Your name could be here too, and I might randomly give you a shout out, like our good friend John Friedman. Or maybe Spitsock. That's a weird name, Spitsock. What's going on there? With this level of power, you can basically make me say anything. Just sign up with a strange name. Well anyway, stick around for the final season, which I'm going to work on right now.